Hey guys, welcome to another interesting tutorials. I hope you all are doing well. If you are new here, please do well to click on the red button below to subscribe. In these tutorials, we'll be learning how to make this short Ankara dress with center front zipper, cycle collar, and the shoulder flounce. So let's get into it. I'm using a 3 yards of Ankara fabric, and this other plain fabric is 1 yard. So I'll be using this long zipper for the center front, so I'll explain that later. I folded the fabric into two. I used the biggest part of the body, which is the hip, divided by 4. I added extra 6 inches for seam allowance, so I have about 16 inches here. So I've gone ahead to mark the straight line for the shoulder line. So all my measurement will start from this line. So the first measurement I'll be taking is 1 inch from the center front for the zipper allowance. So I'll just go ahead and mark it out. So all my measurement will be starting from this line here. So the first measurement I'll take is the neck width. I'll be using 3 inches for the neck width, and the neck depth I'll be using 3 inches also. That's 3 by 3 inches. Now I'll be taking half of the shoulder width. The shoulder is 15 divided by 2. It will give me 7.5. I added extra half an inch. That's 8 inches. So from this shoulder width, I'll come down by 1 inch for the shoulder slope. Then I'll slant it to the neck width like this. So from the shoulder slope, I'll take the chest line. So the chest line I'm working with is 8 inches. Then from the main shoulder line, I'll take 9 inches. So I'll place it here. Afterward, I'll take the shoulder to bust point. So the shoulder to bust point is 11 inches. So I'll mark it out. Then I'll take the shoulder to waist. The shoulder to waist is 17 inches. I'll also mark it out. The next measurement I'll take is the shoulder to hip. The shoulder to hip is 26 inches. Then I'll take the shoulder to full length. The shoulder to full length is 42 inches. I'm adding 2 inches for seam allowance. That's 44 inches. So I'll use everything I have. So I'll just go ahead and connect all the lines. Now I'll place the shoulder width on the chest line. So I have 8 inches. So I'll place the 8 inches here. Then I'll draw a straight line from the shoulder to the chest line. Then after doing that, I'll get the midpoint of this line. So the midpoint is 4 inches. Then I'll come in by 0.75. That's 3/4 inch. So I'll connect it with a slant line to meet the shoulder width. So after doing that, I'll take the bust circumference. Quarter of the bust is 9.5. I'm adding 2 inches for seam allowance. Then I'll go straight to the waist. Quarter of the waist is 8 inches. So I'll be adding 1 inch for that and 2 inches for seam allowance. Then I'll come to the hip. Quarter of the hip is 10.5. So I'll be adding 2 inches for seam allowance. So what I have on the hip measurement, I'll place it on the full length, but I'll add extra half inch, I beg your pardon. I don't want it to be too small, so I'll just make it 11 inches instead of 10.5 inches on the full length. So I'll go ahead and connect all the lines. So after doing this, I'll go ahead and connect the armhole. So I'll be cutting this out. So now I'll be cutting the back. I'll place the front to cut the back. So this is another piece of fabric. I folded it into 2. So on the center back, I'm going to mark out 2 inches. So the 2 inches is going to serve for our zipper allowance and our overlap slit. Although it's not going to have zipper on the back, there won't be a zip. It's just to help us tighten the back to avoid bulge. So that's why we are taking this zipper allowance. So I've marked out the 2 inches here. So the next thing I'm going to do is to place the front on the back. That's the front panel. I'll place it on the back. I'll make sure the 1 inch on the center front is on the line of the center back. So I'll just mark out these lines. So after doing this, I'll take the shoulder to back half length. So the shoulder to back half length for this measurement is 16 inches. So I'll keep the front aside. Then from this 16 inches, I'll come in by 0.75. You can actually use half an inch. It's still fine. So from this 0.75, I'm going to take 1 inch. I'm going to mark another 1 inch from this 2 inches line to guide me on how to draft the back, because it's going to have a slit at the lower part. So I'm going to mark out 1 inch here like this. The 1 inch is just a guide. So from this part I came in, remember on the back after I came in by 0.75. So from this point I'll connect it to this 1 inch on the hip line. So I'll connect it like this to the hip line. So after doing this, I'll decide how long I want my slit to be. So I'll be using 10 inches for the slit. So I'll mark it from the lower part here. I'll mark the 10 inches for our overlap slit. Then remember I came in by 0.75 from the back half length, and I connected it to this 1 inch on the hip line. So from this hip line, I'll connect it to stop here where the overlap slit will start on this 2 inches line. So I'll go ahead and mark it out. Now on the back half length here, I'm going to connect it to meet this 2 inches line on the neckline here. After doing this, I'm going to cut through this line all the way and stop at the overlap slit. So I'll place the front panel on the back like this. So I'll make sure the center front, that is the 1 inch on the center front, is on the 2 inches line on the back. So on the back, for the back neckline, I'm going to use 1 inch for the back neck depth. Then I'm also using 3 inches for the neck width. So I'll go ahead and connect it like this to meet the front neck width. So I'll cut out this excess. So for the back armhole, the back armhole is going to be half an inch wider than the front armhole. So I'm following the front pattern as a guide to cut out the back. So the next thing I'll be doing is to place the dart. Remember we took 1 inch for dart allowance. So I'll be using it for our dart. So to get our dart, I'll place it on the bust line. The dart for this measurement is 8 inches divided by 2 to give me 4. I'm adding extra half an inch, that's 4.5 inches. So I place it on the bust line. I'm starting the measurement from this 1 inch zipper line. So I'm placing the 4.5 on the waistline and also on the hip line. Then from the hip line, I'll come up by 2 inches. Then on the waistline, I'll take half inch on both sides. From this 4.5 inches mark, I'll take half inch on both sides. Then on the bust line, I'm going to come down by 1 inch from the bust line. So what I'll do next is to connect it. That's from this half inch mark I took here. I'm going to connect it to the bust line like this. I'll repeat the same thing on this 2 inches mark I came up with on the hip line. So I'll connect it to have like this angle dart shape. After doing this, I'll repeat the same thing on the other side of the front panel. I'll repeat the same thing here, but I'll be doing that later on. Then on the back, I'll repeat the same thing. I'll do the same thing for the back. So on the chest line here, I'll come down by 2 inches. Before I'll place the dart, I'll come down by 2 inches. Then I'll place from this 2 inches line here, I'm going to place 5 inches here. Remember on the front I use 4.5, but for the back I'll be using 5 inches for the dart. So I'll place the dart also on the waistline and also on the hip line. So from the hip line, I'm going to come up also by 2 inches. Then I'll take half inch on both sides for the waistline. Then I'll connect it like this to get our darts. So after doing that, I'm going to trace out the excess I have on the center back. All this part that I won't be needing. So I'll stop at the overlap slit here. So I'll start cutting it from this line here. So the main reason I used 2 inches was because of the overlap slit. So the overlap slit is 2 inches. That was why I use it on the center back. I used 2 inches on the center back. So I'm going to separate it. Then I'm going to keep it aside. Then on the front panel, I'll also separate the front like this. Remember, it's going to have a zipper. So this is the good side. So now I'll be cutting a strip of fabric that I'll be using to make a placket on the center front. So I'll go ahead and cut it and show you. So this is the good side of the front panel. I've gone ahead to cut out a strip of fabric. I used the length of the dress to cut it out, and the width is 3 inches. I made the width 3 inches. Then I folded one side by 1/2 inch, so I'll be left with 2.5 inches. After folding it, I gave it a good press. So I'll be placing it on the good side of the front panel like this. So this part that is folded, I'm going to top stitch on it. I'll be top stitching on this part. So the wrong side of the strip is going to be on the good side of the dress. So I'm going to also top stitch the beginning here all the way to the end. So that means, remember, I folded this part and I've given it a good press. So that means I'll top stitch this part. I'll make a tiny stitch and also this other side. So what I did on this part, I'll also repeat the same thing on the second panel. So guys, I've done that. I've top stitched this part, and I've also done the same thing for the other one. I've also gone ahead to attach darts on the front panel. I've stitched the darts. So this is the dart line. Then on the back, I've also done the same thing. I've stitched the darts. So the next thing I'm going to do is to join the back panel together on the center back. So I'll sew it. Remember, it's not going to have a zipper. I'll be sewing it by 1 inch all the way to the end. I'm going to stop here. Then from this point, I'll cross it over and sew it by 1/2 inch. So I'll do that and show you. So guys, I've stitched it by 1 inch. When I got to this point, from this 1 inch here, I crossed it over and I stitched it by 1/2 inch. So I've opened the center back. So this is the slit. You decide anywhere you want it to be. So I'll just top stitch this part here to secure the slits. That is so that it will stay firm. Then I'm going to weave the edge here. You can weave it, or you can also use hemming gum to fold it. Now on the center front, I'm going to fix zipper on it. So I'll be marking 1 inch for the zipper allowance. So I'm marking it on the center front where I placed this red pattern on it. So I'll repeat the same thing on the other side. So this is our zipper. So the length of the zip is around 40 inches long. And from the neckline, the length of the dress is around 42 inches. So I have excess of 2 inches for the seam allowance on the hemline. So before fixing the zip, I'm going to sew the hemline by 1 inch. So I'm double folding it so that I can sew it by 1 inch before placing it on the zip. So I'll do that. I'll fold this part and I'll sew it and come back and show you. I've done that. I've sewn the full length with the 2 inches seam allowance. Then I stopped before the end of the side seam to make it easier for me when I'm joining the back, so that it will tally with the back side seam. So now that I've hemmed it, I'll be fixing the zipper on the center front. So I'll come down from the neckline by 1/2 inch. I'll repeat the same thing on the other panel. Then on the zipper, I'll do the same thing. I'll mark 1/2 inch here. So I'll start sewing it from the top of the zipper here on this head here. So I'm going to place it this way. Good side of the zipper will be on the good side of the panel, but I'll make sure I place it on the 1 inch mark. So I'm going to pin it up like this. Remember, good side of the zipper to the good side of the panel. I'll sew it to the end here. Then I'm going to turn the other panel this way. I'll place the good side also to the center of the zipper like so. I'll make sure it's on the 1/2 inch at the neckline. So I'm going to also pin this side up because I'll be sewing it. So we'll sew it and we'll have something like this when we are done. So I'll just go ahead and sew it and show you. So guys, I've fixed the zipper. As you can see, it's equal. So I'll just open it up like this. You can easily open it up like how you wear a jacket. So you can still fix it back like so. Then you zip it all up. So the next thing I'm going to do is to join the front and back together on the shoulder. So I'll be sewing it by 1/2 inch. So I've done that. I've sewn the shoulder together. That's the front and back shoulder. So I'll be cutting out a flounce. So from the shoulder, I'm going to take the midpoint. So the midpoint of the shoulder is 2.5 inches. Then from the shoulder mark here, I'm going to come down by 9 inches. Then I'll do the same thing on the back. I'll come down by 9 inches. Then I'm going to take a straight line. I'll trace where the dart is here so that it will look straight. Then I'll trace it to the other side of the front panel. That's to the other mark here. So I'll measure what I have on this line. So I have around 19 inches. So I'll be cutting the flounce by 19 inches. So I'll be using this pattern paper to cut the flounce. I folded it into 2 like this. And I'm going to refold it again into 4. Then after doing this, the next thing I'll do, I'm going to refold it on bias like so. So remember the length of the flounce is 19 inches. So I'm going to divide it by 8. I'll be left with around 3.5 inches. So from this 3.5 inches, I'm going to use the length of the flounce is going to be 5 inches. So I'll just mark it out. So I'll cut it out. So this is the flounce. So I'm going to open the center here. Then I'll measure the length of the flounce. Remember I needed 19, let's say 20 inches because I'll be using half an inch for joining. So I'll need around 20 inches. So I still have excess here. So I'm going to cut out this part. So I'll pick it from this point that I need. Then I'll cut the excess out. I'm going to fold it again. Then I'll come in by maybe 1 or 2 inches. Then I'll shape it this way. So I want this side to be a little bit sharp because that's where I will start sewing it from here. So I'll measure what I have. I needed around 20 inches. So from this point is where I'll measure to the other end. So I have around 20 inches. So when I fold it again, I'll still recheck. As you can see, I have 20 inches. So I'll be cutting it on a fabric. Then I'll show you. So for the purpose of these tutorials, I drafted it on a pattern paper, but you can actually draft it on the fabric. So I've gone ahead to weave the lower parts. Then I will be sewing this side by half an inch. That's the edge. I'll be sewing it by half an inch. So if you notice, the center here is longer than the edge. So I'll be fixing it on this line I marked. So I'll place good side to good side like this. So I'll place it here. So I'll pin it up. Then I'm going to sew it by half an inch. Then I'll have something like this. So let's do that and show you. So guys, I've done that. I've stitched it by half an inch, as you can see. So I've also, on the hemline, I've also stitched it by half an inch. Remember, I weaved it, so I just stitched it by half an inch. So I noticed I had a little excess. So I decided to pleat the center here so that it would just look equal. So I did the same thing. I pleated the center here. So this is it. So now the next thing I'll be doing is to join the side seams together. Remember, I left 2 inches for seam allowance. I'll be sewing it by 1.5 inches so that it will have a little ease on the dress. So I'll be sewing it by 1.5 inch all the way to the full length. So guys, I've done that. I've joined the side seam. So we're almost done with the dress. So I'll be taking the round neck measurement. So I have around 18 inches for the round neck measurement. I'll be drafting it on a pattern paper for that's the collar. I'm making a cycle collar. So I folded the fabric into 2. This folded part is facing me. So I'll take a straight line like this. So after doing this, I'm going to take 3 inches for the neck depth and another 3 inches for the neck width. So from this 3 inches mark, we're having 6 inches. I'll take a horizontal line. So in between these 2 lines, that's the horizontal and vertical line, I'll come down by 1.5 inches. Then I'm going to blend it in here to meet this point. I'll repeat the same thing on this other side. So then I'm going to measure the neck measurement we need around 9 inches. Remember, it's on a fold, so 18 divided by 2 will give me 9 inches. So this is my 9 inches, so I'm marking it here. So after doing this, the next thing I will do is to come down by 1.5 inches here. That will be the length of the collar. So I'm not adding seam allowance to the length of the collar. Then the next thing I'll do, I'll add ½ inch for seam allowance here. Then I'm going to take a straight line to this point. Then I'll make a little curve here. We don't want a straight collar, so I'll curve it a little like this. So I'll trim it out. So I'll be cutting it on a fabric. So this is our collar. I've cut it on the fabric and I added interfacing to it. So I cut out another bigger fabric. So I'll be placing it on the good side. That's good side of the collar will be on this other piece of fabric, like so. So I'll pin it up. So I'll be sewing this point by 1/4 inch all the way to this other end. So guys, I've done that. I've stitched it all the way to the other end. So I'll turn it to the good side and I'll give it a good press. So I've done that. I've given it a good press, and on this other side I folded one part of the collar by ½ inch. So this other side I did not fold it, so I'll be placing it on the dress. So the good side of the collar, that's the part I did not fold, will be on the wrong side of the dress. I'll make sure this stitched part on the collar is starting from the beginning of this zipper here, like so. As you can see, I'm trying to align it properly so that it will tally. So I'll just go ahead and pin it up. So you make sure you take an accurate measurement. If not, you have excess on the collar. So it's very important you take an accurate measurement. If it needs you to double check, it's very important. So as you can see, I'm trying to pin it up. Then I'm going to sew it to the end. So I'm going to place this other end of the collar to the zipper. That's to the beginning of the zipper line here. So I'm making sure that it's aligning. So I'll place this point here like this. So like I said, the part I did not fold on the collar is on the wrong side of the neckline. So I'll be sewing it by 1/4 inch all the way to the end. So guys, I've done that. I've fixed it to the dress. That's on the neckline, the collar. So the next thing I'll do, remember I told you I folded one part of the collar. So this part I folded, this ½ inch mark I folded, is what I'll be using to top stitch it. So I'll tuck in this excess, that is this stitched part. I'll tuck it in here like this. Then I'm going to top stitch this part neatly. So while you are sewing it, make sure it's staying flat. And I'm going to make a very tiny stitch all the way to the end. Like I said, make sure it's properly placed, that is, it's staying flat before sewing it so that it will not squeeze. So I'll make a tiny stitch all the way to the end. So guys, our collar is fixed. Our collar is ready. As you can see, it's perfectly fixed and it's looking very neat. So our cycle collar is ready. So I've sewn the hemline, the front and back. I've done that. Then on the back, I've also top stitched this slit to secure it. Then I've also hemmed this part here. Like I said, you can weave it or you can use hemming gum to secure it. Now I'm going to fix the sleeve. I already have a video on how to draft the basic sleeve. So the length of this sleeve is 10 inches. So I'm using 2 inches for seam allowance. So I'll be left with 8 inches. So it's actually a short sleeve. I will be joining this side by 1 inch. I cut out 2. So I'll join the hemline. I'll stitch the hemline. I'll fix it to the dress. Then I'll come back and show you. So guys, we are done with the dress. So this is our sleeve. I fixed it. I'm sure you know how to fix a sleeve, so that's why I didn't bother to show you. So we've come to the end of these tutorials. We fixed our overlap slits. We fixed the flounce. I hope this tutorial was helpful. Please don't forget to give it a thumbs up, subscribe and share. Thanks for watching and see you in my next video.